Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not for profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct to consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20. That's episode number 145. Chris, we just passed our sixth anniversary. The episode one was August 3rd of 2020. So,
Oh,
welcome.
wow.
The Take 20 is created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20-ish minute live conversations feature leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry and are scheduled twice a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a quick housekeeping note. We'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session. You don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll collect them and we'll get to try as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. Today's episode, as CTV and streaming have become media darlings, linear TV has continued to shrink, particularly on the pay TV side. The local broadcast TV market also has been affected, particularly with younger viewers fleeing for streaming. However, there's still a committed viewing market for local linear TV. Yes, it skews older, but that also means it has financial might. What are the biggest challenges facing performance and D2C brands when considering the significant market that perhaps isn't as sexy as the shiny new thing, but is still quite valuable? What are the audiences who remain committed to local linear TV watching? And what opportunities does that programming and audience continue to provide for performance and D2C advertisers? As always, Take 20 host and Brand Response Council Chair Chris Foster, who also serves as PCM Integrations Chief Evangelist, is here. He's ready to chat with Cannella Media's Christi and Modus Direct's Carey Chase. Welcome all. Chris, take it away.
Thomas, thank you so much. What a fantastic introduction, and welcome in Carey and Christi. So like Tom said, the decrease of linear TV audience has been in the headlines. We all know it. But it's really local markets that it impacts, right? Restaurants, services, carpet cleaners, the stores, all the stuff that you know, and all the areas where local businesses rely on this form of advertising. The question is, what are fake headwinds? What are real headwinds, right? What's the fake news versus the local news, right? But there's local content like news and sports, pulling for viewers and pulling for those advertisers that align. So really want to dive in, and what I think we're really excited about is to get the reality, what the real story is of what's actually happening. Some quick intro. So my name is Chris Foster. I am the Chief Evangelist for PCM Integrations and Postcard Mania. We are the #1 direct marketing platform for SMBs and the #1 direct mail platform for automated mailings for sales organizations and mid-market companies. Carey, go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do.
Hi, I'm Carey Chase. I'm a media director at Modus Direct, which is part of Blue Water Media Holdings, and I do a lot of things. I also do account services for some of the clients, really take everybody from initial idea to implementation within television, CTV, out of home, you name it. So a master of all, master of none.
Excellent. Christi?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christi Anderson. I'm the Vice President of Media Strategies at Cannella Media. I've been with Cannella for, almost 20 years, working with performance-based advertisers. Our start was long-form media, but as we're talking about today, as channels have evolved and as consumers have evolved, we've evolved as well. And so our mix now includes, of course, long-form linear television, but also short-form CTV, digital, among others. And I think one of the quick things that I wanted to intro is, for me as a member of the agency world, when I look at the media landscape, not from the point of view of like, is this channel trendy, but can it bring my clients incremental profitable customers? And so I know these are the things that we're going to get into. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk today.
Wonderful. Okay, well, let's just jump in then. I think that, Carey, you said that you're a master of all of these media channels, which is awesome. So when you're working with clients now that are wanting local and regional, what are the solutions that you typically pull out of your toolbox that you immediately recommend?
Yeah, it of course starts with what are their goals, because that will really vary, and have worked with a lot of different clients. If it is brand awareness, kind of what you referenced at the top of the call, which is news, sports. Sports is really what's keeping a lot of the local, especially the local broadcast still in the conversation in the game. But performance side, we will also look at the DigiNets, which are actually doing really super well. Yes, it caters to an older audience, but from a performance side, we've really seen that area just continue to expand and grow. And as they kind of as the different entities utilize those, they will come up with new programmings and new integrations. Another area that we have found that a lot of stations are leading into are segments, or where some of their programming may have gone where it used to be maybe syndication and they've pulled it back and they're doing their own programming. They've been monetizing that with allowing a lot of local advertisers to do 4 or 5 minute interviews or do on-site interviews there where they can show their wares. And it really varies from, you can do insurance, you can do, as you said, mom and pop shops, all sorts of things. So they've gotten very creative at the local side to try to make sure that the relationship between their stations and advertisers is personal.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And I think that I think local is personal. And, we at Postcard Mania and PCM Integrations are big advocates and supporters of small businesses. We know that small businesses are family businesses and family businesses are local, right? These are your neighbors and your friends who own these businesses. And we want them to be successful. And sharing those personal stories is something that I love. And I want to get back to that in terms of the creative approach. But Christi, I'd like to turn to you real quick. As VP of Media, you've got so many different dials to use on the dashboard for this client, right? Or so many tools, whatever analogy or metaphor you want to use. But there's something special about local linear, right? It's unique. Tell me about that and what you like about it and where it best fits.
Yeah, local linear, it's special in that it combines scale with kind of what we've talked about at the start of this, with that context of the viewer. So things like your local newscasts, weather events, local sports broadcasts, whatever it is that you're tuning into your local broadcast station for, it becomes not just video inventory, but it's trusted, highly relevant, highly engaged content and moments in a consumer's day. So, when you think about our advertisers, right, that matters for them. And sure, it's an older skewing audience, but what you have access to are consumers who not only have the time to be engaged and focused, but they're household decision makers. They have purchasing power. They have established needs. They have the ability and the desire to act on the solution that you're offering them. And so, things like that are especially relevant for products with higher AOVs or a need, to discern trust before a conversion. And it also helps us, local TV helps us as the agency be much more intentional. So rather than buying TV broadly, we can identify markets where maybe your consumer profile is or where your distribution outlets may be. We can target where the competitive environment is and whether the economics make sense. So it really becomes local broadcast for all the reasons why we said it's a gem, right? It allows us. Is it right for everybody? No, probably not. But who it is right for, that's our role, as your agency partner, is to find where and what media is the right fit for you. And local broadcast is definitely a great option for many.
I love that. Carey, I think I remember at a previous episode, you had talked about speaking with, like a local channel, like in Wichita or Nashville, or like the Pittsburgh ABC affiliate, like super localized, super niche. Is that what you found when Christi had talked about, where if you got a product, it's a considered purchase, and you're like, this would work really, really well around Youngstown, Ohio, or Morgantown, West Virginia, and I think we can find the channel that does that. Is that the approach that you take?
Sometimes, it will vary, again, kind of based on goals. In particular, what you were referencing there is maybe brick and mortar, and if there is some established relationships, I will see here in Chicago, where I'm based, I would say WGN does a great job in terms of they have the most successful morning show, and so I, as a person, an advertising professional, really look at how they have navigated these waters, and what I had mentioned, a lot of segments are involved throughout the programming, and the 4-hour morning news show where they're doing all sorts of segments, and then they do things that are very locally based, and I think that has translated. And also, what they've done is, because their newscasters are well known within the community, they have used that to start up even CTV and things to kind of bridge those gaps. And I think also that bridge also brings in younger viewers for them on the broadcast side. So it's really kind of understanding it from a more of a holistic standpoint. As far as stations that are doing really well for one particular, we'll look at the programming. Maybe there's some alignment as far as that goes with what I have. I have a client that does specialize in running shoes or shoes that help with foot problems, and so we've looked into some areas where they're running the Chicago Marathon or doing something like that, where you'll have one station and it'll be more programming based rather than just that particular program. But here in Chicago, I find that you can use events, sports, those things as a way to launch that relationship.
Oh, I like that. That's such an interesting blend to use. What Christy had talked about was kind of the moment in the consumer's day, like whatever
Mm-hmm.
that piece of content is, and kind of wrap your advertising around that. Tom mentioned at the very beginning, kind of as an introduction, about the audience itself, right? Who the audience is for local linear. Carey, Christy, I'll go back to you. What is this? What is that? If you were going to describe that audience, I'm sure they have broad strokes of it's 55 plus, blah blah blah. But more so than just the broad demographics, can you describe for us who that audience really is? What kind of consumer and buyer they are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, when we're talking about linear TV, of course, it is an older skewing audience. Doesn't mean it's an irrelevant audience. It's just an older skewing different audience than, maybe we were used to 20, 30 years ago, right? So, but that audience is, I think I mentioned it earlier as well, it's a highly engaged audience. This is an audience that is tuning in specifically to watch their local broadcast station for whatever the reason is, to get their local news, to watch a sports cast, to watch a weather event, whatever it is. They are choosing to spend their time in that program on that time, and they're staying there, right? That's something that doesn't have the benefit really elsewhere in the media world, right? It's this engagement, this content, this focus.
Mm.
And so that audience is engaged, they're focused. Because they're older, they tend to have a higher spending profile, right? So they, they're heads of household, they're the decision makers. You don't run into that, potentially running into, capturing the eyeball of a younger decision maker, or a younger viewer who is not the decision maker, and you have to kind of wait for that conversion to follow through, through the approval process or whatever it is in their household.
The mom and dad, hey, can I buy this? No.
Exactly. Which, I'm constantly being plugged with over here. But yeah, so again, highly engaged consumer, money to spend, the decision power to spend, and really at this point in their life, they know what they want, they know what their problems are, and if we come to them with a solution to their problem and we make it easy for them to purchase it, we did our jobs. So
I like that, because it's an age, or it's a person that, because they skew older, because they have some years under their belt, they know what they like and they like what they know, right? And that if you can find that right product fit for that audience, you've got a vehicle that's totally unique and local linear to show them. And I think it's interesting too, you talked about the engaged audience. So they're not on their phones, they're not distracted, they're not online, they're not looking at bings and boops. They're just watching television and can be right there to really get that impression from the advertiser. All of that is awesome, and I love that. I love this little specialty aspects of local linear. Years ago, people, cried the demise and the complete collapse of local radio, or radio in general. But radio still works, right? People still listen to radio the way they can, even if it's on something like Alexa. They can still, pull up, a local radio station and hear that. However, the topic, or the title of this Take 20, was the headwinds. So clearly we know that that's there. And I didn't want to belabor it, because there's still some fantastic opportunity with local linear. But Carey, What are some of these headwinds that you recognize that are actually real and not just kind of talked about or made up?
Yeah, I mean, there's just you can't. Data is what we live and die by, and the audiences as they are shifting, and it is definitely younger. Just as an anecdotal, I was at the chiropractor yesterday describing something and asked, "Oh, did you ever watch the Colbert Show?" Which is in the headlines, and he probably 30 and was like, no, never. Like, I don't even know if he knew what I was referencing. And so that's indicative of that's definitely his mindset of preparing for this Take 20 was, wow, there really isn't that base of like, oh, I don't watch it anymore, but you have that history to it. So I think it's going to continue. The numbers are going in that direction. So those are definite headwinds. As I had mentioned before, the stations are really trying to bridge that gap and kind of have something so that it's more, and I think like radio is a little bit as you saying with Alexa, just acknowledging what the future is and playing in both sides of the sandbox and being relevant both on the digital side as well as on the linear side, if you will, and so that people can kind of go back and forth and they know them as an entity rather than, oh, that's this and this is different. So they all have apps, they're all playing in the media, the broadcast world. It's just really kind of how when it was antennas to cable, I think they're trying to, and they being the broadcast ownerships, they are still using that kind of that mindset of just it's the delivery rather than the entity itself of broadcast television going away.
Roger, I get that. Christy, what's your take on this, on the real headwinds?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with everything that Carey said. And, I think the fragmentation is real, but there's opportunity in that too, and not to like flip a negative into a positive, but right, the headwinds of the audience fragmentation is real, but it also allows us to you just have to be a little bit more strategic, right? So it's not anymore about looking at TV as one or the other, right? It's not, oh well, I have a linear TV strategy, and now the viewership is going down, and therefore like my campaign is just going to go down. Well, no, it's about finding all the new opportunities to reach your viewers, and to reach your consumer, and so it's there's people still watching TV. They're just watching it differently. And so you have to just build a strategy that finds those people where they are, and make it easy for them to find your campaign. And the bigger piece is the converting, which is where I actually see some of these headwinds, right? This like, okay, maybe people aren't watching live TV as much anymore, but they do always have a phone in their hand, right? And so, okay, well, maybe you catch them wherever they're watching, but then you make it easy for them to convert, right? So like it all kind of the digital, the linear TV, it all kind of goes hand in hand and can work and should work together. It shouldn't just be this sort of myopic media strategy any longer. We really should be looking at all approaches.
Yeah, because gone are the days where you would throw a message and then have a big 800 number, and expect that to actually be the ticket for conversions. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And so, it's kind of like the obstacle is the way. Like, how do you figure out, and be smarter with those dollars, and get more precise if you can. So we also know that CTV is a little bit more accessible now for local markets. I'll give you an example. I was in the YMCA on the bike machine, and I was watching a local channel, and I got local CTV ads for like a school and the Scripps Aquarium, right? I mean, and it was really local, but it was streaming because it was on the free streaming platform. Does that give kind of a quote unquote out for local linear channels and local linear stations for them to say, okay, well, we can actually play in this realm, and then as an advertiser, yeah, I can play in this realm too. I can be local linear, but also have a game in CTV as well. Do you have to do both?
Yeah, I think so. Right. They do that, right? I mean, it's been going on. I was buying local CTV, from the local stations, probably, almost for the last 10 years, if not more. So it's something they're very wise. As I mentioned, I feel that it's gotten into the conversation of just however you want us, we're going to be the entity. We are your local station, per se. And however you'd like to digest us, we're happy with that. So I'm not surprised. And then I buy CTV specifically for a Florida hospital. And it's very interesting because we do a lot of different changes on getting hyper-local, what you're saying, maybe down to a county or to specific zip codes, and doing A/B testing, but we're still running linear. We're doing the CTV. We'll adjust the creatives accordingly, but it gives us kind of those opportunities to do some testing as a whole. And that's more of an awareness campaign. It's not as much of a performance campaign, but it does. They look at the data overall, and it's interesting to highlight certain things the hospital wants to highlight. We're able to check that box.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
and if you don't mind, Chris, I'm gonna jump in. I also think it's important to, even from an advertiser perspective, they both have different strengths, right? So I think a broadcaster needs, as Carey mentioned, right? Like a broadcaster needs to meet their watcher where they're watching, and so whether that's CTV or whether that's local TV, like they should have both. But as an advertiser, in a media agency, we should be looking at both and not looking at one as interchangeable over another, right? So not looking at, oh well, we're going to move. You're already in local linear. Let's just move you to local CTV and have that sort of be a one-to-one exchange, right? It's not. They have different. Yeah.
I get it. So Christi, you're kind of saying it's an and, not an or.
Correct.
Yes.
I love it. Well, gang, we are already at 11:25. We want to have time for our guests to ask some questions. So, Tom, do we have some questions from our audience?
We do. Great job, guys. Lots of good questions outstanding from the audience. I will say that going into that CTV and local and all that, I was watching the Dodger game here last night in Massachusetts, and all of the ads on MLB TV app were either for local car dealerships and near me, or for people who are running in the Massachusetts primary on September 1st.
Wow.
So I'm watching the LA broadcast of the Dodger game, and every ad insertion is for something that's on the North Shore of Massachusetts. So interesting. An interesting angle on what is now the new local, right?
Yeah.
All right. Enough of my pontificating. Questions. And we kind of were touching on this from a media aspect, but this is a question about the creative implications. I know we're all media people here. The creative implications of advertising on local linear. Do performance brands need a different approach for local linear than they might use for CTV, social, or other channels with their creative?
Yeah, I can jump in. That one's interesting for me because I'm a long form girly at heart here. So when I think about creative, right, I instantly go to, well, certainly if you're going to run local linear and we're going to run a long form, you would want your long form creative to speak to your local market, to tell the story, to get the to get the motivation to buy, right, to answer all the questions that you need. Then you drive them to the website to order or whatever it is, right? Or you serve them with a different creative. Then that's right. We're getting into like the shorter formats now. So then, yeah, you would probably have a shorter format creative that sort of ties up maybe a stronger CTA, right? Really drives to an order at that point because you've served them the information that they need, and now now you're gonna get them to order, and hopefully then at that point you're using your digital media to drive the conversion at that point. So that's a really long one answer to say that's coming from a long form perspective. That's where we use the creative to sort of integrate and speak and talk. But I don't know, Carey, maybe you can speak to it from a shorter format perspective.
Right. I've done both. I would say that it would be more of a localized from a creative standpoint if it's a brick and mortar situation going on that you need to do that. But I've also done the same creatives locally that we've done nationally. It just really depends on the creative and the goals of the campaign, but you can do it. It's easy. You can traffic it, no problem. So there's no issues as far as that. You can run all sorts of different kinds and different percentages and, however it makes the most sense. Things, it's really kind of what the goal of the advertiser is, but it's pretty easy.
Makes sense. Next question, and I'd like to thank this person for reading his issue of PDMI Weekly this morning, I believe. I read a report this morning that streaming dollars in this year's upfront beat both broadcast and cable spend combined. Does that continued dip in spending in broadcast portend extended opportunity for D2C brands on the outlet? I guess this is going back to the old days where it's like, well, the less upfront spending there was, the more opportunity was for our group to come in a way. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I can jump in. We don't certainly live in a world of upfront purchasing in my world, but yes, it does present an opportunity. Again, kind of speaking more in the long form sense, right? So as less upfront spending is out there, that media tends to go to remnant, and so that's where your D2C agencies come in and scoop that up, and we have it available for you. We're kind of seeing the same thing on the short form side as well. Definitely more inventory available is out there. I don't know, Carey, what are you guys seeing?
As somebody who buys media, it's certainly, hearing all those stats, I've been hearing that for, again, definitely in the last 5 years, if not in the last 10 years, as far as when they've changed. I'm not seeing half my rates. I'm not seeing, a quarter of my rates for short form local broadcasts. So even if numbers are going down, it's holding on. And I've tried to negotiate. We're aware of that, and we negotiated. Really, performance is what helps drive the negotiation as far as that goes, or what you're trying to achieve. So yes, but the numbers are, I think, the headwinds is still ahead of what the actual reality is. But we navigate that.
Great. I know we talked about the age group of the viewership. Someone asking, I think, for a little bit of hope here. Are there any categories or products right now designed for younger consumers that are still working in the outlet? Any bright spots for the under 50 crowd?
For linear TV specifically?
Yeah.
No, but I don't think that's a bad thing either. Again, it's back to kind of what we talked about using the good thing about the fragmentation is that there's a lot of different options to reach your consumer. And so even though TV is, as we said, it's a targeted but broad reach. And granted that would be great to be able to hit that to a 25-year-old audience. The reality is they're not watching it. So it wouldn't be efficient for a younger demographic product to go that route. Now, could we get there? Right? Maybe. I would love to figure out the right mix where you're kind of blending all the strategies together and building awareness enough that it does translate. But sorry, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I'm thinking about like Instagram, for example, right? Just opened up longer format viewing. And so I think I foresee a little bit of a glimmer where as the younger demographic gets used to watching longer content, I think it might bring them back to TV. And so there's my hope for you, hoping to reach a younger demo in TV. I think it's coming.
Good.
I think it's really smart to say that, right, there's programming in Nice that, all of a sudden is watching kind of some older program. Gilmore Girls is always a great one for tweens, and you kind of get them back sucked in. I'd say it's some medical things that kind of, again, span great, but it's not TikTok. So, right, I'm not going to be, but I think the digital is playing along with TV, and again, it's just they'll get you in however you consume it.
Yep.
Great. This is kind of going to get into your guys' day to day and how it's affecting you. 2 to 3 big corporate entities own the bulk of local stations now. What does that mean from a buyer's perspective? Are processes more centralized? Are you still facing a situation where you're dealing with dozens, hundreds of sellers in various markets. Like, what is the day-to-day like with such a mass ownership of this space now? Are you dealing with one couple big groups or a whole bunch of people still?
More people than for all the fragmentation, I'd be able to deal with like three people, but it's not. It's still a bit arduous in terms of having to call up a lot of different reps, and you can use. I mean, it's always been something where you can use rep firms and kind of talk to 3 or 4 people and have that dispersed. Or on the direct response side, you kind of wanted those one-to-one relationships, and you did end up calling 50 different people in the course of the day. People are not calling or emailing, but it can really vary. It has, on the cable side, it's definitely gotten a lot smaller than the broadcast side. And because even though you have a Sinclair and Nexstar and all of these big groups, they still have local salespeople, so you're still dealing with those local sales reps by and large.
Good. All right, I'm going to slip one more in here because it just came in, and it goes back to what we were talking about the previous question. Would it be efficient on linear TV to reach a 25-year-old as perhaps a co-viewer? Any thoughts on that?
So meaning somebody that's sitting there potentially watching with their grandparent or something, right? That'd be approach.
I love, Christi, that you went to grandparents instead of just parents.
I'm stuck in grandma's house.
Come on.
Offended a whole lot of people. Yeah, I mean, so what I will say is I haven't seen it, assuming I'm thinking about the question in the right way. We used to see, I haven't seen it much. I'd be curious to see how they work currently, but like kids products, right? So like the learning creative, or the learning type creatives used to be out there. These brands that were very much targeted to kids as the co-viewer, but ultimately the other member was watching them. So I haven't seen as much of that lately. I think there is an approach there, certainly. I haven't seen it much, but yeah, I think there's something to be said for that, for sure.
That is interesting because you can think about it having, Christi, to your comment, you can think about if grandparents, you think those little kids, grandchildren products, right? That could be applicable. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think too. The direction of the question too could be seen as, there's a lot of kids coming home from college and living with their parents, right? And so is there anything that, like, I don't know, but is there anything that theoretically hits for someone who's 55 and someone who's 25 at the same time? Who knows? I don't know.
It was interesting. I think sports, having just experienced the World Cup and kind of thinking back to my family, when football games are on, occasionally baseball, I think NFL in particular, you're going to find areas where you're going to, but the efficiency is not going to necessarily be there, but that audience will be definitely broader.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up there about sports, because with the breakdown of so many of the regional sports networks, a lot of teams are going back to local broadcast. I think if you look at Scripps, has made a lot of hay bringing, like, local, especially in hockey and women's sports, bringing local teams back to broadcast, and so that is a kind of an interesting opportunity there. So anyway, thank you, Christi. Thank you, Carey. Thank you as always, Chris. We appreciate you all. Wonderful conversation. For those of you who are online but don't have your coworkers online, this is going to be on YouTube by Friday. So we'll get out that link, and everyone who's missed it can watch it then. Our next Take 20 episode is set for Wednesday, August 26th, when Chris will host the latest conversation in our recurring media optimization series, this one featuring data and measurement partners. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. And registration continues to swell for PDMI West, October 19th through 21st at Intercontinental San Diego. If you're ready to mix incredible networking with tremendous educational content, online pre-sale badges are just $4.95 for PDMI members and $6.95 for non-members. That's a $100 discount from on-site prices. Badge holders get the first crack at our deeply discounted hotel rooms at the host hotel. These rooms start at more than $200 per night discount from the hotel's online advertised rate. So jump on it now. I know it's hard to think about fall when we're still in the middle of summer, but it's coming soon, about 2.5 months away. So visit thepdmi.com/pdmi-west to register now. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the Take 20. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.